starring in a new movie.
I'm not a cop. Sleazebag bounty hunter.
Meet actor Rutger Hauer in preview Wanted Dead or Alive. Then is it true that drugs have 1 out of 3 people in Hollywood hooked? Find out Monday on Take 2 at noon Eastern on CNN. This is CNN, the world's most important network.
Should your name be on this envelope? It should if you or someone you love is age 50 to 80, and it will be addressed to you if you call now for this important information. Free information about a life insurance policy designed especially for men and women age 50 to 80. Life insurance with no physical examination and no medical questions. You cannot be turned down regardless of your health or for any reason. And your premium will be $6.95 a month and will never increase. Colonial Penn Life Insurance Company wants to send you the important information in this envelope, and it's free. So if you are age 50 to 80 and thought it would be difficult to buy life insurance, shouldn't you call now? Here's the number.
For free information in the mail, call 800-257-1257. This is a free call, 800-257-1257. From Washington, Roland Evans and Robert Novak bring you the people who are the news on Evans and Novak.
I'm Robert Novak. Roland Evans is on vacation. In his place, Fred Barnes of the New Republic and I will question the new Speaker of the House of Representatives, Representative Jim Wright of Texas. The new Congress convened this week with the Republicans making this proposal.
During the 100th Congress, this historic Congress, no bill, joint resolution, or amendment shall be reported or considered if it contains any provision to increase marginal tax rates.
Predictably, Representative Lott's resolution was voted down by the overwhelmingly Democratic House, but it previewed congressional action that may be instituted by the new Speaker. In contrast to his predecessor, Tip O'Neill, Speaker Wright suggests that raising tax rates might be desirable as a deficit reducer, even against Ronald Reagan's wishes.
And couldn't understand why in
Mr. Speaker, does that mean that the American people can expect from this new Congress a freezing of the top rates in the tax structure?
No, not necessarily. That's just one of many options that are being considered. I think what it does mean is that the American people have a right to expect from this Congress a new honesty in looking at the facts and admitting the truth, that we can't just continue to go on doubling military expenditures every 5 years and reducing the amount of money available to our government by big tax cuts for wealthy people and balance the budget. You just can't do all three of those because mathematics forbids it.
We'll be back with more questions for Speaker Wright after these messages.
Hi, I'm Loretta Swit with the most exciting new product for busy people since the invention of the telephone. It's the incredible new hands-free featherweight phone. It plugs right into your telephone and ends sore necks forever. It frees up your hands, so you're free to do whatever you want whenever you're on the phone. You can talk as long as you like and do your work at the same time, whether you're at home or in the office. And the reception on both ends is just as good as what you get from your handheld receiver. In fact, it even has a volume control, so you'll never have to ask anyone to speak up again. And this switch allows you to use the handset whenever you want. To switch to the featherweight phone, just flip the switch and put it on. That's all. And you can move it from phone to phone in seconds. Just plug the base in here, the cord from the wall in here, and your headset in here. It's that easy. Best of all, it's only $19.95. And if you're concerned about quality, listen to the words of the founder of America's largest answering service.
The featherweight phone is unbelievable. We've bought thousands of similar headsets for over $130 each. And yet I can't hear the difference between our expensive ones and the featherweight phone.
And it comes with a full money-back guarantee. Now, it's not available in stores, but you can order yours right now. Look, even if you've never ordered anything from TV before, believe me, this is the one time you should. Here's how.
Call toll-free 1-800-228-8500. Have your credit card handy when you call to save COD charges and rush your order, or pay just $19.95 plus COD when your order arrives. So call now 1-800-228-8500. 1-800-228-8500. This is a free call.
Mr. Speaker, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded to me that you were backing away from your suggestion of a few days ago that the top rate on individual income tax be held at 38% and not reduced to 28% as was enacted in the tax reform bill last year.
Fred, what I suggested was that this is one of several options that might be worthy of consideration, and I reiterate that today. I think the easiest and most painless way I can imagine to find the additional revenues is not necessarily to raise anyone's taxes, but just to postpone tax cuts for the wealthiest people, those people who make $150,000 a year and more. They don't really need tax cuts. They're not going to suffer if they don't get further tax cuts, and they probably are patriotic enough to say, well, all right, just forego any more tax cuts for me until we get our fiscal house in a little better order.
Well, I'm not sure about their patriotism in regard to taxes, but wouldn't that proposal betray the essential compromise of tax reform that, sure, you give up your tax loopholes, but because of that, we'll lower your rates? This would change that. This would say, well, we're not going to lower your rates after all, the way we promised.
Well, as I said, the only suggestion that I've advanced is one of many options, and it would affect only those people in the very top brackets, only the people who are the most fortunate in our society. And their tax rates have been cut from 70 to 50 and now to 38, and they're proposing an additional reduction in their tax rates down to 28%. And if the government could gain $20 billion more to fight the deficit, I think the wealthiest people in our country would be willing to say, we will continue to pay taxes at our present rate rather than putting a bill on a credit card and sending it to our grandchildren to pay.
Let me ask you just one more thing on this. Wouldn't this just reignite the effort to get the loopholes back in particular, the capital gains differential, which was thrown out in the tax reform bill? If the top rate were 38%, wouldn't millions of Americans demand that the capital gains differential be reinstituted?
I just really don't know anything about that. You may have a good point there, Fred. I'm not suggesting that, nor am I set in concrete that this is the only way or necessarily even the best way to go. I think what I'm trying to say is that we've got to be honest with ourselves. We've got to face facts. We're not ever going to balance the budget so long as we take a hard and fast arbitrary position that you can't have any additional revenues. Now, Mr. Reagan has taxes in his proposal. He doesn't call them taxes, but they sure are. They're taxes on poor people. He proposes that a young couple struggling to buy a house will have to come up with $800 or $900 more out of their pockets as a fee for the privilege of borrowing money that the government guarantees. That's a tax. He proposes that a person having to go to Medicare or Medicaid treatment in a hospital will have to put up $600 or $700 more out of his or her pocket. Meager incomes of the elderly, that's a tax. Now, he may not call these taxes, but they sure are taxes. He's proposing to make it harder, not easier, for a young American of average, modest circumstances to go to college. Make them pay more money. As far as I'm concerned, that's tax.
But that isn't paid to the federal government.
Well, these would be paid to the federal government.
Not on the college question.
Well, it could be paid to the federal government if the federal government were the lender. You see, he wants to do away with a lot of the federal government's programs that make it possible for some 2 or 3 million young Americans to get a college education every year. And then he wants to make it more costly for those who do take a federal loan or some federal benefit they got to pay more back to the government. I call it a tax.
All right, Mr. Speaker, two more questions on this tax, if I could. It occurs to me, when you and I both came to this town, the top rate on rich people was 90%. Why don't we get it back up to 90% and we could really balance this budget?
Well, I don't know that that's warranted. It seems to me that 90% is very nearly confiscatory.
Well, what is the right amount? Do you know?
Well, I don't know what the precise right amount is. I have not installed myself as the Ayatollah of taxation. I'm not all wise. I'm just suggesting, as a general proposition, Bob, that those of us who enjoy the benefits of this blessed country, and I'm one of them, you know, I make a lot more money than most people do, I ought to be willing to pay the tax that other people pay. Okay. That's all I'm saying. And I think most Americans would rather pay as we go rather than put the bill on the backs of another generation. Let me show you what we've already done. By allowing this national debt to be more than doubled in just 6 short years, we've increased the amount of interest that we have to pay to the point that now it's going to be about $180 billion. Just about $1 out of every 5 that we pay in taxes is dead weight. It's going to pay interest. It doesn't buy a single school book or pave a single mile of road or buy a single weapon or pay a single soldier.
Now, your predecessor, Speaker Tip O'Neill, and the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Dan Rostenkowski, had taken the position that they were not going to increase taxes unless they were in the same boat with Ronald Reagan, unless he was marching hand in hand with them, remembering what happened to Walter Mondale.
Well, you know, I think that's fair enough.
You agree with that?
I don't know that it's possible. I'd like for Mr. Reagan to be a party to these things, but Mr. Reagan refuses to face the solemn fact that you just can't balance the budget and double military expenditures without the revenues to do it.
You're saying he doesn't necessarily have. If you feel that you could reduce the deficit without him going along, you would move without him. Is that right?
If I could find a decent, honorable way to reduce the deficit, I'd do it. I'd like to have the president's cooperation. But there's nothing in the Constitution that says you've got to get the president's permission. That's not the way it works. Congress is supposed to be a full and equal partner, and we're the ones who are supposed to have controls over the purse strings. I think we've got to face our responsibilities.
Well, let me, Mr. Speaker, ask you about the purse strings over defense spending. President Reagan has asked for only a 3% increase in real spending for the Pentagon, less than he's asked any year during his presidency, I believe. Is 3% about the right amount that Pentagon spending should increase?
If everything, military and civilian, might increase by 3%, that might be correct. But you know very well that you can't have an across-the-board 3% increase and balance the budget. Now, it seems to me that we decreed in Graham-Rudman that the cuts would be faced evenly and that the sacrifice would be evenly shared among domestic programs and military spending. So you can't exempt military spending, say let it go on up and up and up and continue to squeeze more and more and more out of things such as health care for the aged and indigent.
So you're saying you oppose that much of an increase. What do you want, a zero growth, stay about the same?
What I'm saying is that the Budget Committee probably is going to make a more even-handed judgment, as it did last year, and is going to spread the sacrifice.
Well, then it actually cut defense spending, though. It cut it. There was negative growth, is what.
It cut the rate of increase. There was more money allowed for a Defense Department than there'd been the year before, marginally, not much more. But I guess what I'm saying is that we have doubled military spending in these last 6 years. We have reduced spending for such vital things as education, which in my judgment is every bit as important to our national security in the long run, and that we've got to have a more even-handed balance. We can't just continue to squeeze out things like education and public health and the need of the public infrastructure, roads and clean water and things of that kind on which the American people depend. You can't just continue to shunt those things aside and not have them in order that you can buy more and more expensive weapons.
Well, why not, since you're seeking a balanced budget, you want to get rid of the deficit, why not accept President Reagan's domestic cuts and then, but not his Pentagon spending, and reduce it? Then you get a lot nearer a balanced budget.
You know, as a matter of fact, that is very near to what has been done. Congress has not accepted all of his domestic cuts, but I was sitting with President Reagan and Senator Mark Hatfield, the Republican chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, former chairman, and at the time he was the chairman. Senator Hatfield said to the President, Mr. President, don't you understand? In these 6 years of your presidency, we have reduced domestic discretionary spending by about 34%. And we've increased military spending on a current services basis, that is when you crank in inflation, by 87%. Now this is from the man who's been in charge of the appropriations in the Republican Senate. So we have reduced domestic expenditures to a considerable extent. We've tried to hold down the voracious thirst for ever greater growth in military spending. But at the same time, we've been willing to grant an adequate, strong national defense. I'll tell you what I think Mr. Reagan needs to do. He needs to have the honesty of Harry Truman, who said the buck stops here. Harry Truman conducted the entire Korean War without adding 1 penny to the national debt. Not a penny. We paid as we went.
Also didn't win the war.
Mr. Speaker, when we were talking about rich people paying taxes, you were commenting that
I don't think he lost the war.
No.
Harry Truman didn't lose the Korean War.
But anyway.
And then my point doesn't have to do with whether... I think Harry Truman did a responsible statesman-like job by saying the buck stops here and the American people are willing to pay as we go for what military defense we need in our generation, not in peacetime, just to build up more and more monuments and put the bill on a credit card and send it to the grandchildren. That's not honest.
Mr. Speaker, we're talking about rich people, and you commented you were doing pretty well. I thought that the Congress wanted to have this humongous pay increase, that you poor fellas couldn't get along on $75,000 a year. Are you against that pay increase for congressmen?
You know better than that. We fellas are not asking for any humongous increase. This was an amount, and humongous may be a good word. I think it was more than was warranted. That was recommended by the Pay Commission.
How much was it?
I think the Pay Commission asked for something like
$135,000 a year, was it not?
I think it was. I had 130 in my head, but I thought that it was excessive, and so advised the President. I told him that I didn't think that was warranted, though the Pay Commission made some sophisticated analysis attempting to conclude that this was necessary to bring the buying power up to what it had been 15 years ago. Well, it doesn't have to be up that high. And so I said to the President, I thought it ought to be a more modest kind of cost of living increase. Well, no, I forget what it is. What is the President recommended?
He raised it to $89,000.
Yeah. I think that's more nearly in line. I really do.
You think your members can go out to tell their constituents they just can't get along on $75,000?
No, I don't think anybody's going to be so foolish as to say he can't get along. Of course members of Congress can get along. So can Supreme Court justices.
Why don't they then?
Well, they do, don't they?
Well, why are they asking for a pay increase?
They're not asking for a pay increase.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, I want to clear up one thing before we finish. There's been a bunch of page one stories based on what you said on another television interview as to whether or not you favor the President issuing a pardon in advance to Lieutenant Colonel North and Admiral Poindexter so that they will testify and not take the Fifth Amendment. Do you recommend that he do that or not?
What I said was that the President had publicly asked Congress to grant immunity from prosecution in order for these men to come testify. I said, surely the President knows a great deal more than the Congress knows about what his appointees did. And if he truly wants them to come forward and tell the whole truth, and if he truly believes on the basis of his knowledge that they ought to be immune from prosecution, he has it within his power by the stroke of a pen to grant it. And that the responsible thing for him to do, if he thinks they warrant immunity from prosecution, is to grant it. And not to put it on the back of Congress to grant it, since we don't know what they did.
Well, if he asked you, Jim, should I give him a pardon, what would you say, yes or no?
I'd say, Mr. President, based upon your knowledge of what they did, if you honestly and earnestly believe that they deserve a pardon, then it's your responsibility to do so.
Mr. Speaker, let me get, because I'm unclear about this, what the Democratic position is, what your position is on further aid to the Contras in Nicaragua. $40 million has to be additional, will be sent to the Contras in February unless Congress blocks it. Are you going to attempt to block that money in military aid going to the Contras?
I am not sure whether an effort would be made to block that money or not. I'm not aware of an effort afoot, but I cannot tell you that one isn't going to happen.
Okay, then what about new aid come next fall?
I'm inclined to think, Fred, that it would be very difficult to expect Congress to grant new and additional aid to the Contras, particularly in light of the fact that the administration has not seen fit to spend the money that we gave them for the beneficial uses of the democratic governments in Central America, to strengthen their hands and help them to demonstrate that the social and economic objectives of those people can be attained and better attained in a free constitutional system without sacrificing their political liberties.
But aren't you worried if Democrats vote to cut off aid, to block further aid, that they will be blamed for the death of the Contras, and that will be used against them in 1988?
I'm not worried about blame and using against people in elections. I am worried if we make the wrong judgment. I am worried about what's happening in Central America.
If you had your druthers, would you like to see the Contras win?
If I had my druthers, I would like very much to see a rearrangement of the situation in Nicaragua where the government of Nicaragua would totally forswear any violation of any other nation's territorial integrity and would grant to the people of its own country fundamental basic human rights to the church and to those who are in the radio and newspaper business, rights of assembly. In fact, those people promised to me, the people shortly after they came into power, Humberto and Daniel Ortega and some of the rest of them, Daniel Escoto and others, promised me that they would do this. I don't believe they have fulfilled that promise. I don't know if that answers your question.
All right, we only have just a few seconds left. I wanted to ask you one question, Mr. Speaker. The House Democratic Caucus has given a vote of no confidence in Congressman Les Aspin as chairman of the Armed Services Committee. Do you think he will get the chairmanship back?
I think it's anybody's guess. There are, so far as I know, 4 candidates, and all of them are friends of mine. All of them are able men.
Are you neutral?
I am trying to preserve a fair and even-handed approach to it as the Speaker. All of them are friends. All of them are trusted people. I like all of them. Obviously, a person cannot but have a private preference, but it's a secret ballot, and I think I would violate the general fundamental premise under which it's cast if I were coming out making statements.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Congratulations on your election, and Fred and I will be back with some comments after these messages.
Hi, I'm Michael Landon. And if you or your spouse is an honorably discharged veteran, I hope you'll listen carefully to this very important announcement. But first, I'd like you to meet a real American hero, Mr. Odell Vaughn. After losing both legs in World War II, he went on to serve his country and his fellow veterans for 34 years in the Veterans Administration, recently retiring from its second highest office. He now serves on the Veterans Advisory Board of the Veterans Life Insurance Company. Odell, what makes the Veterans Health Plan so special?
Everything, Michael. First, it pays $50 a day. That's $1,500 a month for covered hospital stays. These cash benefits are paid directly to you or anyone you choose, regardless of any other benefits you receive from other insurance companies or the government. You use the money as you see fit. Second, no vet or spouse or widow of a vet can be turned down for this coverage for any reason whatsoever. And most important, you're guaranteed this protection at special veterans rates. Michael, we're really grateful for a company so sensitive to the needs of veterans and their families.
We'd like to mail you this free information kit telling you all about this program. But please don't put it off. This year, nearly 1 out of every 2 families will have at least one member hospitalized. So call right now. Believe me, you won't be sorry.
Call toll-free 1-800-328-7100, 1-800-328-7100. The information kit Michael Landon spoke of will be mailed to you free with no obligation. So call now, 1-800-328-7100, 1-800-328-7100. This is a free call.
Bob, I thought Speaker Wright made a little news today. He made it clear that Democrats will not try to block this $40 million for the Contras that's still in the pipeline, and Democrats will make their stand in the fall trying to block renewal of aid. Now, of course, Speaker Wright said he's for a democratic Nicaragua that doesn't invade its neighbors, but he didn't say how he would achieve that. I think the Contras are the only way, and he didn't offer an alternative.
You know, I agree with you, Fred, as you said, that he was backing away from his previous position that they have to freeze the 38% rate on top incomes. But he did say this, different than Tip O'Neill, that he is not waiting for President Reagan on a tax increase. Any time that he thinks he has a majority of the House, I think he said he's going to move for a tax increase. Whether he ever gets that majority is another matter, though.
Well, that is new. You're right about that, but what's not new is what he said about the budget. Democrats are not going to go along with President's request for a 3% increase in defense spending, even though that's the most modest request that President Reagan has sent in so far. They want to jack up domestic spending and knock down the Pentagon. We're going to have the same fight, not a very interesting one that we've had for the last 6 years.
Jim Wright in style, Fred, is a lot different than Tip O'Neill. It's a great loss for the cartoonists, unquestionably, but the fact that the Speaker will appear on a program like this, Speaker O'Neill never would, but I would say he is just as tough an antagonist and just as partisan as Tip O'Neill. I'm Robert Novak for Fred Barnes. Roland Evans will be back next week.
If you'd like to comment on this weekend's program, write to Evans and Novak, Cable News Network, 111 Massachusetts Avenue, Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20001.
Did you ever have one of those days?
Oh, no.
When everything breaks at once?
Time for the book.
Introducing Fix It Yourself, the new series from Time Life Books. It shows you how to fix just about anything that breaks around your house.
Here it is, the flywheel's jammed. This isn't hard at all. Wedge the end of a broom handle against an impeller and slowly work back and forth.
A broom handle? What are you doing?
Just what the book says. There. Got it. All fixed.
That's great. Now let's fix the dishwasher.
Each book troubleshoots the problem and solution, so there's no more guesswork or wasted time.
Here's your problem. It's the timer.
But where's the timer?
Oh, right here.
Next, follow the step-by-step instructions for your specific model type.
Oh, gee, that's easy. And it won't take long either.
And the directions couldn't be simpler.
Okay, I got the timer.
Keeping a solid